Howdy, who all my stock market gamblers? Welcome today. I'm Tall Mike. So glad you're here. Well, what do we got going on in the markets? We're kind of going sideways, right? We're having volatility. We're having big up days, big down days, but we're really going nowhere fast, right? The market is looking for what direction the next big move will be. Now, as long as we stay below the 50-day moving average, the move will be sideways to lower. Now, if they can push it above the 50-day and we stay there for a few days, then we have a shot at making a new high, challenging the old high. But my take is we're going to stay below the 50-day, move sideways to lower, and we'll see how this all plays out. Now, what do we have on Wednesday? On Wednesday, well, Fed Chairman Powell, he came out, right? And he blew the sunshine at us, right? He was blowing the sunshine. He was telling us that the economy's on fire. The consumer is strong. Let's start with the first one. Look at the economy is not on fire unless we're talking about maybe a dumpster fire. This economy is a mess. It's completely fake. It's completely driven by basically what? By basically just printed money, by printing more and more money, bringing in stimulus into the economy to keep it going, right? Otherwise, it all comes crashing down. They have to print more money at a more increasing rate. They have to print more and more and more and more just to keep the economy chugging along at what it is. But it is not on fire here. It's not doing well. It's a fake economy and it's struggling at best. All right, so they say the consumer is strong. What consumer is he talking about? Look at this consumer that's in the economy now. Credit card defaults, record high. If the consumer is so strong, why do we have record high credit defaults? They're not paying back their loans to the banks. The banks are in trouble. The consumer is not strong. Consumer is very weak. Look at McDonald's came out and told us the consumer cannot even afford to eat at McDonald's anymore. McDonald's is now a luxury. I mean, I don't know about your state, but in California, we got that $20 an hour for everybody working in the fast food industry, and they have just jacked the prices up. I mean, you can go into these places. I went into Wendy's the other day. I mean, what I used to get on the value meal for $1 was now running $5 or $6. That's not 2-3% inflation. That's 500 or 600% inflation just since the pandemic. Look at, they got to pay their employees more. I get that. But people cannot afford to pay the prices that they have risen these prices up to. The consumer is not doing well. All right. So what else happened? What else happened? Well, the Fed chairman, he came out and he said, basically, they're not going to raise rates, which was really good news, right? And the markets kind of reacted positively to that because a lot of the market was fearing that they'd actually have to raise rates to fight inflation, but they're not going to fight inflation. Me and you know that. They're waving the white flag now. There's nothing they could do. Bank of America came out, said there's not going to be any rate cuts this year, not until we get out into mid-2025. Now, how's that going to look to the stock market? Going to send that market lower. What's it going to do to the housing market? A lot of people were expecting the housing market mortgages to come down, but they're actually headed back to 8%. Now, I keep calling. I think they'll be at 10%. 10% probably by the end of the year. And in the next year, probably be 12, 14%. Mortgage rates are not coming down. They're headed higher. And this is creating a problem. Look it's creating a problem for mortgage demand. Mortgage demand right now is at a 30-year low. 30-year low, right? You got to go back to 1995 just to find the demand this low, right? And that's because mortgage interest rates keep going up. About 7.5 right now, let's call it, but we're clearly heading to 8%. Now, if you lived in my state, you lived in California. Now, before the pandemic, right, you could go out and buy the average price home in California, and you'd have a mortgage payment about $2,500, right? Okay, well, now the prices of the homes went up, right? And the mortgages went up, right? So now it's over double. It's over double. You were paying about $2,500, $2,600. Now you're paying over $5,000. Over $5,000. This is just the average price home. This is nothing fancy. This is just a run-of-the-mill house, right? And this isn't in the rich areas. I mean, it's not like in the Bay Area. These are in the outskirts. They take the average, they weigh it out, but that's basically what happened. So a lot of people think that, that Well, let's use some common sense here. Okay. A lot of people thought when mortgage rates went up, they went up from what you got yours at 2.8%, but now people have to pay 7.5. Okay. So they almost tripled, right? Now, common sense would tell you that that would push prices down, but it did not. So what we have now is the most unaffordable time in the history of the world to go out and buy a house. Now, if you want to do it, please go out and buy one. Us realtors, we need the business. Mortgage brokers, we need the business. But a lot of people are leaving the market. Investors aren't even buying right now. Vacation home people, they're gone. They're not buying. So a lot of the demand has gone away. I mean, it's still there demand-wise, but only if you lower the rates back to 2.8%, because it doesn't make sense to be buying up here at these 7.5% rates. But the good news is that they're not going to raise the rates, right? Now, why? Why aren't they going to raise the rates? Well, the Fed loves inflation, right? They have to figure a way to inflate the debt away. And the only way they can do that is to get inflation up much higher than it is now. And they're going to pull that off. I mean, they're going to pull it off. They're going to lose control, and we'll probably go into what's called a hyperinflation situation. I could see that happening. That's very possible. That is not off the table. And that's going to be worse than if we go into the depression. Those are really the two choices that I see. And it may be one, maybe we have the depression first, then the Fed reacts to it, which is this hyperinflation, this extreme printing of money, and we take off from there. Maybe we hyperinflate first, and then they go, oh, we got to raise up the rates, and then they crash everything. So you could actually have the Great Depression and hyperinflation, but not together. I mean, you'd get one first and then the other. And this is the thing. Okay, so common sense would tell you that eventually the Fed's going to have to pivot here, right? Otherwise, the banks will go away. They can't survive, right? If the Fed does not pivot, the banks go under. If the Fed does not pivot, the government cannot pay their bills. We can't pay our bills now. That's why we print all the money, but we won't even be able to pay the interest rate on the bills that we have, on the debt that we have, if the Fed does not pivot. So at some point, the Fed's going to pivot. Now, the question is, what is the reason for the pivot? Now, I would be willing to argue that the reason is more important than the pivot itself. Now, maybe they don't pivot this year. Pivot just means that they're going to start dropping rates. Maybe they wait till 2025. That's a possibility. Maybe something breaks later this year. I'm still saying the banking system is broken. It's failing. It's a broken system. They're going to have hundreds of bank failures, and that's probably going to be the reason for the pivot, and that's going to be what's going to send. You see, now you would think, now you listen to Barbara Cochran, she'll tell you that when they pivot and bring the rates down, that houses are going to explode higher. Now, let's assume she's right for a second. I'm not saying she's a complete idiot. Well, maybe I am. I don't know. But okay, let's assume she's right. Let's say the Fed pivots and houses explode higher. Well, what is that? That's inflation, right? As a housing market, that's shelter. If it exploded higher, that'd be inflation. So the Fed would look like a complete idiot for pivoting in the face of this hyperinflation with houses going up. So they would have to reverse course if that were the case. But you see, my contention is the reason for the pivot is going to be the bank failures. The reason for the pivot is going to be the unemployment numbers are going to be skyrocketing. They're going to pivot because they're going to see that we're headed for a depression. I believe we're already in a recession, but we could easily turn this recession into a greater depression, right? So their reason for the pivot is going to be an emergency, that they broke something. And that's not going to send house prices higher. That's going to send house prices lower. Now, here's my take as to why that is. When they pivot, people are going to realize that what they're doing isn't going to work, that they have no control, that they have no game plan. You see, they're going to be saying, okay, we're going to lower rates, and the long side of the interest rates, the 30-year mortgages, they're going to go, not so fast, not so fast. We're going to go up when you're lowering the rate. Now, they can control the 1 year, the 2 year. They can't control that 30-year. That has a mind of its own. And when they lower that 2-year, they're going to be very shocked to see the 30-year rates going up. What is the 30-year rate? That's where your mortgage is. Your mortgage is going to be going from 7.5 to 10% to 12% to 14%. And that's the moment where they're going to start to go, what do you do? And that's where you get this depression thing going, right? Because the depression thing's going to send the housing market crashing down. It's going to send a lot of people will already be out of work because that's the reason that the Fed's really going to be pivoting. So it's just common sense as to how this is going to play out. Now, a lot of people have a different take on things than I have, right? A lot of people, Barbara Cochran, lower rates, houses are going to go up. Well, that makes perfect sense. Well, let's see, they tripled the rates when that made perfect sense that houses would go down. Well, they didn't go down, so it doesn't always work the way that you think it would. But the Fed will eventually lower rates. I think they'll lower it, just waving the flag. We go, nothing we can do. We got to hyperinflate. And that's probably the direction we'll head, except for that 30-year end of the curve is going to head higher, going to send mortgages much higher than they are now, going to send the housing market back to earth. This is just my take. Now, a lot of people, I talk about it in real money, right? Maybe they can keep house levels here, but in the terms of the price of gold or the price of silver, that house market's going to be crashing, right? Price of gold, I believe it's going to go 1-to-1 with the Dow Jones. Okay, Dow Jones 38,000 gold. It could go to 38,000, but I think that Dow Jones going to get cut in half. And yes, I do think gold's going a lot higher. A guy at my church the other day is asking me, Mike, do you really feel comfortable buying gold at these record high prices? And I go, actually, I do. Now, here's the thing. I go, look, gold is not going up. What's happening is the purchasing power of your dollar is going down. Now, listen to mainstream media. What are they telling you? They're telling you that the dollar's strong. Well, it's not strong because it's losing purchasing power. You go to the fast food restaurant, what was $1 is now $6. That means that the purchasing power has been lost. Now, yes, we're strong against other currencies, right? Maybe the dollar holds up against other currencies. This is a worldwide problem, and we're losing that purchasing power very quickly. So yes, I feel really comfortable buying gold right here, $2,300. I think it's a great buy. I think it's cheap. I think you won't regret it. Could it drop back to $2,000? I hope and pray that it does, because I'd really like to stock up on some of that. You see, I missed out a little bit. I didn't buy enough, right? I'd like to buy a little bit more. I need more protection, because what they're doing to the dollar is just destroying it. The dollar's going away every day, loses more and more purchasing power. And there's no end in sight. Look, it's not a good thing for a politician to come out and say, we're going to stop printing money tomorrow. No, he'd get kicked out of office, right? Although I would vote him in, but the general public, they want him to print more money. They want him to send everybody a check for $10,000, $20,000. That's Biden's new plan. Everybody, here's $10,000. Go buy a house. It's not enough, Joe. It's not going to work this time. You can't fix the problem just by papering it over with printed money that we don't have. But Joe thinks you can. He thinks he's going to solve the housing problem, because right now, even Janet Yellen came out and said that nobody who's an entry-level buyer can afford a house. You don't have entry-level buyers coming in. So there's only one thing that can happen. That's house prices can go down. But Joe doesn't want that. He wants to keep house prices up here. What's he going to do? He's going to print money and give everybody $10,000 to go out and buy a house. If that's not enough, he'll give everyone $50,000 to go buy a house. If that's not enough, he'll give everyone $100,000. But you see, Joe ain't that smart. He doesn't have a good plan. He can't figure this stuff out. The printing the money is what got us into this mess, and it's not going to get us out of this mess. Look, if we're going to hyperinflate, we're really close to it right now. I feel very comfortable buying gold. I like silver a lot more. Feel even more comfortable buying silver. But I do think they're bargains right here. That's what I was telling the guy at my church. I go, you want to protect yourself. If you're just sitting there in the dollar, I mean, you're going to get hurt. Even if you're getting that 4 or 5% that the bank is giving you on a CD, it's not going to be enough when we go into hyperinflation. Don't lock up your money for any length of time, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months at the longest, but you're going to see hyperinflation starting to take off. And yes, gold and silver are cheap here, even though they're at a record high. Stock market expensive here, even though it's close to a record high. That's the difference. One's cheap, one's expensive. Look it. If you like this stuff, punch that subscribe button, but give me the thumbs up before you get out there, everybody, and enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk more next week. Bye-bye now.